Hello everyone and welcome to EduTap. Today we are going to discuss 10 important MCQs from the subject of freedom movement and Indian Union, and these important MCQs are expected to be seen in the examination of ESIC Deputy Director. I'm talking about the first stage, that is the recruitment test for this particular examination. So we have been continuing with this series for a long time now, and we have already discussed 18 such sessions, wherein each session I have discussed 10 or 15 important MCQs related to this particular subject. So that means that we are about to complete 200 MCQs related to the subject of freedom movement and Indian Union, and all these 200 MCQs, they cover the entire syllabus, and they have been designed or they have been fetched in such a way that we expect in the examination to see a number of these questions in that particular examination. So without any delay, let us start with the today's session also. And I would again request you that if you have not watched the previous 18 sessions, please do go on the playlist, the link for which is available on top of the video, and you can click that link and you can go and experience all the videos in the playlist, right? So now let us start with the today's session. Before that, I would again like to remind you that if you do like this video, please subscribe to our YouTube channel and also subscribe to our Telegram channel, from where you will be able to download all the PDFs for the sessions on our YouTube channel absolutely free of cost, right? So now without any delay, let us start with the question number 1. So question number 1 is in front of you. Who among the following rejected the title of knighthood and refused to accept a position in the Council of Secretary of State for India? So this question is about a eminent personality who has rejected the title of knighthood. The knighthood title was awarded by the English government, the British government, to people who offered some exemplary service to them, and the title of sir got inserted in front of your name if you were awarded the title of knighthood. Okay, so who of the following persons he refused the title of knighthood, and he also refused the entry into the Council of Secretary of State for India? Options are Motilal Nehru, option B M.G. Ranade, option C Gopal Krishna Gokhale, and option D Bal Gangadhar Tilak. Now be very careful. The title of knighthood would be given to any person who was not extremist in his views, first of all, because Bal Gangadhar Tilak, we know that he was an extremist. Extremist basically means that he was ready to employ non-constitutional means, the means of boycott, the means of strikes and demonstrations in order to protest against the Britishers. So he was not at all in the good books of Britishers. There is a very less chance that some knighthood or some any other kind of honorary title would be bestowed upon Bal Gangadhar Tilak ji by the Britishers. So we can eliminate the option number D. Next, M.G. Ranade, he was a very distinguished personality, a jurist and an advocate from the state of Bombay, from the province of Bombay. He also went on to become a justice in the Bombay High Court. So yes, very exemplary in his service and also well respected by the Britishers. But he also did not refuse the title of knighthood and did not refuse the entry into Council of Secretary of State for India. Basically, this was done by Gopal Krishna Gokhale, option number C. Gopal Krishna Gokhale is the person who was offered the knighthood title. The British government offered it to him. He declined, and he also declined to accept a position in the Council of Secretary of State for India. At that time, this was one of the topmost positions an Indian could hold in British administration, right? Next up, let us talk about question number 2. In the context of Indian freedom struggle, 16th of October 1905 is well known for which one of the following reasons? The 16th of October of 1905. Very carefully we will answer this question, because this question is not at all difficult. You can easily guess this answer. Option A, the formal proclamation of Swadeshi movement was made in Calcutta Town Hall. The Congress and other organizations, they announced for the Swadeshi movement to be held in Calcutta Town Hall. Option B, the partition of Bengal took effect on this day. The proclamation or the enactment which was made regarding the partition of Bengal, it got executed on this day, and the partition of Bengal, it was formalized on 16th of October 1905. Option C, Dada Banerjee declared that the goal of Indian National Congress was Swaraj. And option D, Lokmanya Tilak started Swadeshi movement in Pune. The correct answer for this question is option number B. The partition of Bengal, it took effect on 16th of October 1905, and this day is still etched in the memory of many Bengalis and also in the Indian history books as the day when the partition of Bengal did happen. And the Swadeshi movement, this started even before 16th of October, because the proclamation for division of Bengal, the regarding for division of Bengal, it was issued much earlier, and therefore many other leaders, including Lokmanya Tilak ji, including Dadabhai Naoroji and the S.N. Banerjee, all these important leaders, they were already involved in Swadeshi movement beforehand, right, before 16th of October of 1905. Next up, let us talk about the question number 3. But before that, always remember this date. In the examination that we are preparing for, there is a good amount of probability that we will see questions which are very trivial or factual in nature, and the questions around dates, around important days, important personalities will be there in the examination. So we have to be very careful about the dates, about the timelines, and about the personalities involved at that particular time, right? Question number 3: which one of the following was the first Congress session attended by Mahatma Gandhi? Mahatma Gandhi ji attended the Congress session for the first time in which of the following years? This is the correct answer that you have to give. Option A is Calcutta session 1901. Option B, Surat session of 1907. Option C, Lucknow session of 1916. And option D, Calcutta session of 1917. Now, we have been given the years 1901, 1907, 16 and 17. You have to very carefully answer this question, because most of us aspirants, we know that Gandhi ji returned to India and he finally started his struggle for India's independence in 1915. But this was the year when he returned to India for good, when he returned to India permanently, and he started engaging with Congress activities, and he started participating or organizing various satyagraha movements in the country. But before that, Gandhiji was very active for the emancipation of Indians and other Asians and the people of color in South Africa. And in South Africa, his campaigns, they were also garnering moderate success. So the correct answer, many of us will guess that correct answer is either Lucknow session of 1916 or Calcutta session of 1917, but the correct answer is not any of them. The correct answer is Calcutta session of 1901. Option A is the correct answer, because Gandhiji for the first time attended a Congress session in Calcutta in 1901. He came from South Africa, he attended the Congress session, and basically in this session he requested for help, or he asked, or he appealed to the Congress and Indian leaders to also work for the betterment of Indians or other people who are in South Africa. So he was there to garner support or to claim support for his own campaigns that he was organizing in South Africa, not for India. In 1915, when he came back, then he came back for good and he started participating for the Indian freedom struggle, right? Correct answer here is option number A. Be very careful. Gandhiji for the first time came into India in 1901, right? Next up, look at the question number 4. Question number 4 is about, again, a very important personality. Who among the following first used the word Swaraj in its political sense and accepted Hindi is the national language of India? Ram Mohan Roy, option B Swami Vivekanand, option C Mahatma Gandhi, or option D Bal Gangadhar Tilak. So the leader that we're talking about, he for the first time used Swaraj as a political slogan, right? And he asked for Swaraj from the British government, that we want Swaraj, that means self-rule. We want Indians to rule over India, right? And he also accepted Hindi as the national language of India. He wanted the entire Indian land mass to be covered under one national language, and that is Hindi, right? So Ram Mohan Roy, Swami Vivekanand, Mahatma Gandhi, Bal Gangadhar Tilak. We be very, very careful. Bal Gangadhar Tilak is very famous for his slogan that Swaraj is my birthright and I shall have it. And this use of Swaraj as a political slogan was first of all done by Bal Gangadhar Tilak, right? So correct answer is option D. After this, Bal Gangadhar Tilak's this concept of Swaraj was also taken up by Swami Vivekanand also. It was also taken up by Mahatma Gandhi. But for the first time, this slogan or this word was popularized in its political sense by Bal Gangadhar Tilak. Clear? Next, the fifth question of the day, we are through the halfway mark of the today's session. The separate electorates for Muslims in India was introduced by which of the following acts? The separate electorates, this is a very important issue that we have to be aware of in our Indian freedom struggle, how the seeds of communalism got sown in India's political system, and the separate electorates for the first time were introduced for the Muslim community. That means in the entire masses, all the Muslim people, all the Muslim voters, they will vote for Muslim leaders, and all the voters who were non-Muslim, they will vote for other Hindus or Sikhs or other religious leaders, right? So on the basis of religion, we separated the electorates, we separated the number of voters who will vote for their own leader who belongs to their own community, right? Which of the following acts made this provision for separate electorates for Muslims for the first time? Option A, Indian Councils Act of 1909. Option B, Indian Councils Act of 1892. Option C, Rowlatt Act of 1919. And option D, Government of India Act of 1935. Basically, Government of India Act of 35, it enlarged the scope of separate electorates, right? And it tried to include other communities also, and it tried to give separate electorates to other communities also apart from Muslims. But for the first time, Muslims were given the separate electorate to elect their own communal leaders in 1909 Morley Minto reforms, or you call them Indian Councils Act of 1909. Okay, so Indian Councils Act of 1909, the separate electorates, this formula of divide and rule was for the first time used by the Britishers in a political sense, in a systematic sense. Okay, so be very careful about this. After this, the 1919 Act will come, and after that 1935 Act will come. In 1919 Act, again the separate electorates, this entire system would be enlarged, and after that in 1935 separate electorates will be announced for other classes also, other categories also. Okay, next up is question number 6. Who among the following started the Home Rule movement during India's freedom struggle? Home Rule movement, a very important movement, started in 1915, and this movement was started by whom? Option A, Annie Besant and Bal Gangadhar Tilak. Option B, Annie Besant and Gopal Krishna Gokhale. Option C, Bal Gangadhar Tilak and Lala Lajpat Rai, and option D, Gopal Krishna Gokhale and Lala Lajpat Rai. So Home Rule movement, it was started in India by two eminent personalities, Annie Besant and Bal Gangadhar Tilak. Okay, so Bal Gangadhar Tilak, he spearheaded the movement in the province of Bombay, while Annie Besant, she led, or she spearheaded the movement throughout the British India outside the Bombay province. Okay, so correct answer is Annie Besant and Bal Gangadhar Tilak. Both of them, they started this particular movement in India in 1915. After a few years, this movement faded out because the demand for self-rule, or the demand for home rule, it was to a certain extent managed by the Britishers. They allowed more Indian participation into the Indian administration, and that is why the demand for home rule fizzled out. But the demand for complete independence, complete Swaraj, it gained much more prominence after that. In 1920, this Home Rule League, it got converted into Swaraj Sabha. Okay, so Swaraj Sabha was the successor of the Home Rule League, which was started initially by Bal Gangadhar Tilak and Annie Besant. Next up is question number 7. Question number 7 is about Aurobindo Ghosh, a series of articles written by Aurobindo Ghosh, known as the Doctrine of Passive Resistance, are associated with which one of the following movements? Swadeshi and Boycott movement around 1905, Civil Disobedience movement in around 1930s, non-cooperation movement of 1920s, and Young Bengal movement, which was earlier movement. So Doctrine of Passive Resistance, it was associated with the Swadeshi and Boycott movement. Aurobindo Ghosh was basically one of the leaders, Indian leaders, who was very extremist in his views, and he was also active during the initial days of Congress, especially during the Swadeshi movement. During the Swadeshi movement, he advocated for a doctrine of passive resistance, that we have to use certain means where we do not directly indulge in violence, but through some very extreme means, we make the government know, we let the government know that we are not at all satisfied and we are not going to cooperate with your policies unless you change them. So Aurobindo Ghosh came up with this doctrine of passive resistance for the Swadeshi and Boycott movement. Okay, next up is question number 8. In the context of modern Indian history, what is Direct Action Day? What is Direct Action Day? One of the very bitter memories related to the India's freedom or India's partition, we can say. Option A says, after withdrawing its acceptance from the Cabinet Mission Plan, the Muslim League observed this day, which led to communal riots. Option B, the Dandi March Day, the direct action campaign of tax resistance, which triggered the widespread civil disobedience movement. Option C, Individual Satyagraha Day, which aimed at affirming right to speech, which led to Quit India movement of 1942. And option D says Day of Partition, on which British India was divided into India and Pakistan. So Direct Action Day is very famously associated with the 16th of August of 1946. And this was the day when Muslim League, it was disillusioned. It was not at all satisfied with the proposals let down by Cabinet Mission Plan. They demanded for their own separate nation called Pakistan, which was first of all not agreed upon by the Cabinet Mission Plan, and that is why the Muslim League, it got agitated and it resorted to violence. Large-scale communal riots were held across the country on 16th of August 1946, and this was a direct action day where they were trying to, take their demand. They were trying to blackmail other Indians and other British officers into accepting their demand by force, right? So this direct action day, it was organized by Muslim League and their leaders on 16th of August of 1946 in order to let people accept their demand for a separate Pakistan. right? So correct answer is option number A. You have to be very careful about this particular name, Direct Action Day. Do not be confused. This is only a day this is only a term or a phrase which is used to remember a day where large scale religious and communal violence happened throughout the country, orchestrated by the Muslim League. Okay, next up, question number 9th. Who among the following wrote the poem Subh-e-Azadi, the morning of independence? The Subh-e-Azadi, who among the following wrote this particular poem? Option A is Sahir Ludhianavi, option B is Faiz Ahmad Faiz, option C Muhammad Iqbal, and option D Maulana Abul Kalam Azad. So Subh-e-Azadi is a very famous poem, and it was also seen in news a few months back owing to some recent controversies which are going on in our country. The Subh-e-Azadi is a very celebrated poem written by another very celebrated poet, Faiz Ahmad Faiz. Correct answer is option B, Faiz Ahmad Faiz. So Faiz Ahmad Faiz is a very celebrated poet of British Indian origin, and when India got independence in 1947 and Pakistan was separated as a country, this poem was written by Faiz Ahmad Faiz, where he stresses upon the hardships faced by the millions of people who migrated from their native places into some other sovereign nation. Many people who migrated from India to Pakistan or from East or West Pakistan to India, and he talks about those people in the Subh-e-Azadi. It's a very kind of a sad poem, a sarcastic poem, and also a kind of a distressing poem, which is stressing upon the impacts of partition, the stressing upon the impacts of communalism and religious disruption which happened at the auspicious time of India's independence. So it was a very happy time. It was a time where many people were rejoicing and many people were celebrating their success after such a long time, but still there were millions and millions of people and families who were uprooted, who were disrupted, who were destroyed because of the partition which happened in 1947. Okay, next up is question number 10. The Nehru-Liaquat Pact between India and Pakistan was signed in 1950 to resolve the issue of what? Nehru, the then Prime Minister of India, and Liaquat was also the Prime Minister of Pakistan at that time. They signed this particular Nehru-Liaquat Pact in 1950 to resolve the issue of protection of minorities, accession of princely states, border disputes, or economic development of borderland areas. This Nehru-Liaquat Pact was again very frequently quoted during recent times owing to some disturbances which are going on in our country. Option A is the correct answer. Protection of minorities. Nehru and Liaquat, both of the prime ministers of these two countries at that time, they wanted to ensure that minorities in India, to be very specific, the Muslim community, and minorities in Pakistan, East and West Pakistan, the Hindu community, they should not be discriminated against by the state. They should be accorded protection by the state, because at that time, since 1947 till 1950, large scale violence was going on, communal tensions were high, riots were there. Hindus and Muslims, especially in Bengal and Punjab region, they were fighting and killing each other, and that is why Nehru-Liaquat Pact was signed. So in order to signal the people that both governments are committed for the security and safety of the minorities living in their jurisdictions, right? So be very careful about the objective of Nehru-Liaquat Pact. So this is the plethora of 10 questions that we have discussed in this particular session, keeping in mind the upcoming ESIC Deputy Director Examination, and I hope that if you are following these sessions very carefully, you will be ready with a very huge set of questions, a stack of questions that you can see in the upcoming examination. This is all for today's lecture, and I request all of you to follow this series very religiously. We are going to cover more such MCQs in the future sessions. Till then, keep on learning, keep on growing. Jai Hind and Jai Bharat.